Hey everyone, I'm Michael Short. Come on, let's go outdoors. Well, not too long ago, you may recall that I had an opportunity to sit down and chat with Alberta Environment Parks Minister Jason Nixon about Alberta's wild turkey management plan. And while it is great to have a plan in place, what are the next steps? How do we get turkeys into the province? How are they going to be distributed? All of those kinds of questions. And it's Alberta Conservation Association's Todd Zimmerling that has a bunch of answers to those questions. I guess, Todd, the first question is what will the turkey management plan allow the Alberta Conservation Association to do?
Oh, that's a really good question, Michael. I guess a wide range of things. The big one, if you read through it, is it allows for us to look at plans for trying to expand the range of wild turkeys in Alberta, whether that be through moving our current turkey population around to different locations, or as is laid out in the plan itself, allowing for bringing in turkeys from other jurisdictions. So potentially bringing in, let's say, eastern turkeys from Manitoba, or there's an opportunity to potentially get some more Merriam's turkeys out of BC, those kinds of things. So it allows, I guess, more flexibility and more opportunities for us to look at how we might be able to expand the potential for hunting over the long term.
Yeah, so right now, I guess there's two major areas in Alberta that sustain, I guess, active populations: the Cypress Hills and the Porcupine Hills. Do you envision putting turkeys in those areas, or are you looking at expanding the range of the turkeys throughout Alberta?
Well, I think our preliminary thoughts and discussions have been around the idea of potentially doing both. Certainly, there's an opportunity to potentially enhance our current populations by bringing in Merriams from other jurisdictions, like I said, BC. So potentially we can sort of increase the density of birds in those areas, or in some years, if we're seeing an overwinter decline, we might be able to help out by bringing in some turkeys and enhancing those populations in those specific areas. We might be able to just simply expand the range of those populations slightly by adding birds on the periphery and sort of starting to move them out from there. But we've also looked seriously about the possibility of trying to establish turkeys in the parkland areas of Alberta. So we're looking right now mostly in the central parkland areas. So in areas such as the Red Deer River Valley, potentially south of Red Deer itself. And we also have a potential site to the west of Edmonton as well, where we might be able to do something like that. So we're starting to look at that. We're in the preliminary stages, but it's a possibility now that the plan has been released and allows for such things to occur.
When you look at where to place them, are we talking private lands, public lands, ACA, AFGA, conservation sites? And then I'll have another follow up after that.
So the reality is, in Alberta, our turkeys do best where they can find overwinter feed source that is associated with cattle feed. So when there's an area, a rancher who is feeding their cattle over winter, the turkeys seem to be moving closer to those cattle and being able to survive better there. And there's pretty good evidence that they'll pick through the cattle droppings to pick out seed, which, think about that next Thanksgiving while you're having your turkey. And of course, in some cases, they'll eat the feed directly as well. But in a lot of cases, they're actually picking seed out of what comes out the back end of a cow.
So when you look at these locations, one of the concerns highlighted in the plan is that turkeys can cause some property damage, agricultural damage. Is that a concern, and how do you move forward to mitigate those issues?
Oh, it's certainly a concern. There's no doubt about it. And so it's not something where we're just going to drive down the highway and kick turkeys out the back of the truck and not talk to anybody about it. So, we're going to be looking for private landowners who are willing to accept turkeys on their land, and talking to neighbors, that sort of stuff. And of course, developing mitigation plans before we do that. So the nice thing about turkeys when they do cause those kinds of issues, they're not like a herd of elk that come in the middle of the night and then take off before anybody can do anything about them. Turkeys are showing up during the day. They're relatively predictable, relatively easy to trap compared to trying to trap something like an elk, for instance. So we do believe that there are certainly options for being able to try to deal with problem turkeys for sure. In other jurisdictions, they've used things like intercept feeding as well to try and move them away from basically causing issues for ranchers, those kinds of things. But it's certainly something we will look at, no doubt about it. And in the end, the reality is turkeys can be shot and removed that way as well. So if it comes down to having to deal with a major problem, we've used every other mechanism to try and reduce the problem. Well, then just simply taking out the good old shotgun and removing the turkey might, in the end, being the way to go. And so that's an option as well. Again, much easier to do than it is with a large herd of elk. That's certainly a lot of ranchers deal with on a day-to-day basis, especially in the wintertime. And so we're not anticipating any types of issues even close to that when it comes to dealing with turkeys.
So I'm supposing that all of this moves to provide more hunting opportunities. What is your time frame from the time that you bring in a number of turkeys, get them planted? Maybe that's not get them released onto land, and then in terms of allowing a huntable population to move forward.
Well, in most places where turkeys have been introduced, including in Alberta when they initially were introduced, we're talking within a 20-year time frame hunting season that open. So anywhere between sort of 10 to 20 years. It all comes down obviously to how well they do. If we get 5 or 6 years of really good springs for turkeys, they do well surviving all winter. You could see the population grow fairly rapidly, and maybe we get to the point where we can have a limited hunt on them in fairly short order. But I would say you're talking at least a decade of trying to get them established and getting enough out there to allow for a huntable population.
Yeah, so this truly is a population based program versus a stalking program, if I could use that term.
Yeah, it's certainly not like our typical put and take trout stocking, where we're putting the fish in for people to be able to take out tomorrow kind of idea. This is our hope is to get populations established, expand them from where they are currently, and yeah, hopefully it becomes a self-sustaining population. We're hopeful that they, I mean, as you know, we do a fair bit of release of pheasants across the province every year. We're hoping we don't need to go to that extent with turkeys. That certainly for the first little while we do as they get established. But past history shows that turkeys can be established in other jurisdictions and can have sustainable populations. So we're hopeful we can get similar type of thing happening here in Alberta. The one caveat is we're talking about trying to establish populations a little further north than what they are traditionally found. So my understanding is if we get a population established west of Edmonton here, it will be the furthest north that turkeys have been established in North America. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe we're pushing the envelope too far. Maybe it won't work, but we are hopeful based on the information we have so far that we can make it happen.
And I guess the final thing, Todd, is when does the rubber hitting the road type of thing get underway in terms of actually going into British Columbia or the States or Manitoba to bring in some turkeys?
Well, we're hopeful that we can get this done. Potentially might be able to bring in some turkeys this spring from BC. So that would be simply just trying to enhance the current Merriam's population we have down in the Southwest. So we know there's some areas of their range where the numbers have declined a fair bit. So we might be able to just simply bring some in to enhance those populations there. But the ability to actually establish more of an eastern turkey population in, like I said, the Red Deer River Valley area or west of Edmonton here, that is something that's going to take a little bit longer. We got to make sure we've got everything in place with the landowners, and we also have to, make some arrangements with Manitoba or potentially some other jurisdictions to get those turkeys brought into Alberta. Big issue we're dealing with right now, we want to make sure we've got it all taken care of, is so we got to make sure we're bringing in healthy birds. We don't want to be accused of, bringing a diseased population. So we're working very closely with the province and veterinarians to see what type of testing we need to make sure we're doing to make sure these are our healthy population that we seed into the province here. So that's taken a little bit of work as well.
Well, as you say, some 18,000 hunters are chomping at the bit to get an opportunity to go out and do this hunting. They're going to have to wait a little bit longer, but lots more to follow up on this. Todd, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.